Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're joining for the first time, my name is Lois, or you can call me Zitere, and today we're going to be learning how to make this dress. Let's go. To start with, we're going to be using Duchess silk fabric. I got this in 5 yards in this shade of green, or is it blue? I don't know, but I'm not going to use all of it. You're also going to need your crinoline, and I got 3 inches of it. Then your pattern paper, your ruler, your marker, your matching zip, thread, scissors, and of course your pins, then your tape rule. So let's start. I'm going to take a piece of pattern paper and start with my shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 16 divided by 2. That will give me 8, and that's what I'm marking right there. So we're just going to mark that and then mark my armhole depth, which is 8 inches also. So we're going to connect the lines like this. After doing that, I'm going to take my bust measurement, which is 38 inches, divided by 4 will give me 9.5 inches. So I'm just going to mark that and then add extra allowance of 2.5 inches. I'm just going to mark that there. Then draw a straight line from my armhole depth to where we mark the allowance like this. Now I'm taking my shoulder to waist measurement, which is 17 inches. I'm going to mark it and then rule a straight line there for my waist measurement. After doing that, I'm going to take my waist measurement, which is 32 inches, divided by 4 will give me 8 inches, and then add allowance of 2.5 inches also. Then I'll connect the line to my bust measurement like this. So now I'm going to take my neckline measurement, and I'm using 4 inches for the width of my neckline and then 3.5 inches for the depth. So I'm going to mark that and make a curve. After doing that, I'm going to extend that line from my armhole depth. I'm going to just draw a straight line like this. That is going to be the length of my yoke. Now I want to make a curve on my yoke, and I'm just going to go up by 1.5 inches. You can choose to leave yours straight, but I just want to make mine curved a bit. So I'm going up by 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to mark that there. And I'm going to connect it to where I marked my bust measurements. But first, let's mark our round sleeve measurements. Now, notice that our yoke pattern is cut together with the sleeve. It's not going to have any joining at the shoulder. So I'm just going to use 8 inches for my round sleeve measurement. And I'm going to mark that all the way through. But first, we're also going to mark our sleeve length. That's the length of our sleeve. Mine is 23 inches. I'm going to be adding enough allowance so I won't have less. It's better I have more so that I cut it later on. So I'm just going to use the whole measurement that's on my pattern paper. I'm not going to cut it. I'm just going to mark that there and then mark 8 inches of my round sleeve measurements. I'm using 16 inches for my round sleeve. My round sleeve is actually not 8. So I'm using 16 inches, so 8 times 2 is 16. If your round sleeve is bigger than that, you can just use more than that. So I'm just going to connect the lines like this. Then on that sharp edge, we're going to give it a nice curve. We're going to connect it to where we marked our bust measurements. So we just come down by 1 inch and then give it a very nice curve. Remember I said I want to curve my yoke. So from there, I'm going to connect it to where we just made that curve. So I'm just going to connect it with dotted lines first so you can see what I'm doing. Now draw a really nice curve and connect your dotted lines. You can use your French curve to do this, don't mind me, I'm just used to doing it free-handed. So just do that. And now that is our yoke pattern, so I'm just going to label it yoke and yoke. So now we're going to carefully cut out our yoke pattern. Now to get that gathered effect on our yoke, we're going to use the slash and spread method. So we're going to create slash lines on that yoke pattern. We're not going to go all the way through our sleeve. We're just going to start marking it from where we made that curve on our bust measurements. This slash lines doesn't have a particular measurement. We're just going to go with the flow. So now it's time to slash those lines. We're not going to slash it all the way through. Just remain about half an inch. And this is what it looks like after slashing. So now we're going to place another pattern paper. We're going to place it under for us to properly spread our pattern. So this is what I meant. You're also going to need a sellotape for this to properly put the pattern in place. So now we're going to tape our front pattern like this. Just tape it to the edge like this, and then we start spreading the other patterns. So just watch as I do. So now we've reached the end of our spreading method. I'm just going to add another paper to the sleeve so that I'll make a new pattern for the sleeve. So just keep watching as I do. So after doing that, it's time to now trace our new pattern for our yoke. So I'm just going to trace that all the way through our sleeve. Then you cut it out. And this is what our new pattern looks like. Now it's time to cut out our bodice pattern. So I'm just going to join the new paper. I'm just going to join it because I want it to be a middle length gown. So I'm just going to do that and then sellotape it. After taping, we're going to come down from our waist measurements and mark my hip line measurements. From my waist to my hip line measurement is 8.5 inches, and that is what I'm marking right there. So now I'm just going to connect all of the lines. and that is going to be my hip line. I'm just going to go ahead to label your lines, waistline measurements, and then your hip line. It's not really necessary. So now I'm going to take my full length measurement from the waistline. I'm going to be using 56 inches as my full length. My full length is originally 58 inches, but I'm using 56 inches. So now I'm going to take 50 inches. I'm subtracting 6 inches because I want to use it for my ruffles. So now for this full length, we are going to use 50 inches. And from my waistline measurement, which is 17 inches, I'm going to go down by 50 inches and then mark a straight line there. Connect the lines and then cut through it. So now I'm going to take my hip measurement on that hip line, and for my hip measurement I'm going to be using 44 inches. My hip measurement is actually 43, but I'm going to be using 44 for ease. So 44 divided by 4 will give me 11 inches, and then add 2.5 inches for allowance. So I'm just going to mark that there. So after doing that, we're going to connect our hip measurement to our waistline, just like this. Now I'm going to take the measurement of how wide I want my A-line to be, and I'm going to be doing that on the hem of my full length. So on the pattern paper we have 25 inches. I'm just going to use 24 inches for the width of my A-line measurement. I'm going to mark that there and then connect it to my hip line measurement in a slant, an A slant. So just watch as I'm doing. So now after doing that, we're just going to smoothen this edge. Just going to give it a nice smooth curve, just like this. And now it's time to cut through our pattern. So on that edge, I'm just going to give it a nice curve and then cut it again. So now it's time to cut on our fabric, and the first thing I want to do is to cut out fabric for our ruffles. Remember we subtracted 6 inches for our ruffles, so now I'm going to take that 6 inches and then add 1 inch for seam allowance and extra 2 inches for seam allowance too, because I'm going to be using crinoline to hem our ruffles. So in total that's about 9 inches, and I'm just going to mark that all the way through and then cut it. So now it's time to cut out our yoke, and here I had an issue. It was just not setting properly in place. Then I folded my fabric in bias to see if it will go, but the same thing also, it was just not given. I flipped it the other way and the same thing. At this point I was really frustrated. So to solve that issue, I had to adjust my slash lines. I had to adjust how wide I spread them, and that is how I'm doing. So I just reduced how wide I spread all of them and then formed a new pattern. Cut out a new pattern for our yoke. So here I'm just placing my paper on that to draw out a new pattern for the yoke. So now I'm just going to cut through. I did not realize I was cutting on my fabric. Please guys, do not try this at home, it's really dangerous. If you want to cut, just remove the fabric. So now this is our new pattern, and I placed it on the fabric. I didn't fold my fabric on bias this time, it's just straight. So I placed it on the fabric, and you see it's now working fine. It's now setting well in place like I wanted. So I'm just going to pin it down. And then cut through. So while cutting, we're just going to leave about half an inch for our seam allowance. So we're going to do that for all of the patterns we're cutting. So this is how our pattern looks like, and when you open it, this is how it looks like also. So by the time we sew and then use our gather stitch, it's going to give it that gathers effect. Now it's time to cut the yoke pattern for our back piece, and now I want my yoke at the back to have a higher neck. So you're just going to watch closely how I'm going to do this. So from that edge, from our neckline, we're going to mark a straight line all the way through. So just watch closely. I'm going to mark a straight line, and on that line I'm going to go down by 1.5 inch. That is going to be the neck depth for my back yoke. So I'm just going to mark that and then give it a nice curve. So now, since this is my back pattern, I'm not going to add any zip allowance because I don't want any zip on my yoke. I'm just going to cut through it that way and then cut our new neckline for the back. Now this is what we have for the back pattern of our yoke. It has a higher neckline. So now it's time to cut out our bodice, and I'm just going to pin it. This is for the front bodice, so I'm just going to pin it on my fabric and then cut through. Now to cut the back pattern, I'm going to place my front pattern on it like this and then leave 1 inch for my zip allowance for the back pattern. So just watch closely how I'm doing. Now I'm just going to cut through. And this is what it looks like with the 1 inch zip allowance for the back pattern. So I'm just going to open it up, and we're done cutting our bodice. Now what I'm doing here, I just want more fabric for my ruffles, so it's going to be fuller. So I'm cutting more strips for it. So now here I want to cut out bias that I used to turn my neckline and other rough edges. So I just placed my fabric in bias and I'm cutting 1 inch, and this is what it looks like. Now it's time to join our front pattern, and to do that I'm going to be locating the midpoint of my front yoke. So I'm just going to carefully fold it and then notch my midpoint. So now I'm going to join it together with my back yoke. So just watch closely. After doing that, this is what it looks like. Don't forget to press each seams because this is a silk fabric and it looks nicer when you sew and press each of the seams. So now I'm going to be stitching the other parts. Just do it for each side, and after stitching and pressing, this is what we have. It looks really nice. I've also gone ahead to attach my rope. Remember I said I don't want any zip allowance on my yoke, so I added rope instead. Now I'm going to turn the rough edge with my bias. I had already left half an inch before stitching my rope because I'm going to use the allowance to stitch bias for my neckline. So now I'm just going to stitch my bias and then sew it, then make a gather stitch on that line round. So just watch closely, and after doing all of that, this is what we have. So you see how I have used bias to cover my rough edge nicely and also done a gather stitch. Now I'm just going to pull through. I'm going to pull through very carefully. So just do that, and this is what we have for our yoke pattern. It looks really nice. So we're going to keep that one side and then join our front and back bodies together. So we're going to place the right side to the right side. Now on my zip allowance, that's on the back pattern, I'm going to take out that 1 inch zip allowance. So I've done that, and if you look closely, I used loose stitches for that, only where I want to place my zip, and for where my zip will stop, I double stitched it and continued with tighter stitches for it all the way down. So now you can see I've used pins to hold my fabric in place. Now I'm going to be taking my bust measurement, and what we have there is about 26 inches. And remember, my bust measurement is 38 inches, but I'm going to be using 40 inches for ease. So I'm now going to minus 6 inches. So 6 divided by 2 will give me 3. So on each side, I'm going to be taking out 3 inches for my bust measurements. So I'm just going to mark that there. So now I'm going to take my waist measurement, and from the top I'm going to come down by 9 inches. You can use 8 inches for yours. So on that line that I marked, I'm going to take my waist measurement. Remember, my waistline is 32 inches, but I'm going to use 34 for ease also. So I'm going to be taking out about 6 inches also. What we have there is 23 and a half. So I'm going to be taking about 6.5 inches, but I'll use 6 inches for this. So 3 inches on each side also. I'm going to mark that and connect it to where we marked our bust measurements. So we're just going to follow that line. And for the rest, I'm just going to use 1 inch to sew all the way through. I'm not using any measurement for that, just 1 inch. So I'm going to stitch it and do it for this other side. After stitching and pressing, this is what we have. Looks really good, and this is how the back looks like also. So now I'm going to join my yoke to my bodice, and to do that we're going to locate the midpoint of our yoke and the midpoint of our bodice, and we are going to pin that together. We're joining the right side to the right side, so we pin that down and then pin where we joined, that is the joining for our sleeve. So we're going to pin that together with the joining for the side of our bodice. So just pin that. Do it also for the other side. So now on the back part where we joined our zip allowance, we are going to measure 1 inch on each side and then mark it. So just look closely. Then place the back yoke on it like this. This is to create an opening at the back. So we're just going to place it on top exactly like this and then pin it down. Then we are going to stitch everything round, and this is what we have. So nice. And this is how it looks like at the back. I've also gone ahead to turn my neckline with bias and pressed it also, and also did the same for the remaining rough edges that I had on my zip allowance. So I've done that and pressed it. I'm just showing you guys how I'm going to tie my rope. It's going to be in a beautiful bow. So now I'm going to be adding my zipper, and I'll take out the rough stitch that I used. So I'm just going to take it out and stop where I double stitched. So after doing that, this is how my zipper looks like. I've also gone ahead to hem my sleeve. I cut it to my measurement, my desired length, and then hemmed it. Now I'm going to join the strips for my ruffles and then attach the ruffles to my dress, and this is how it looks like. So nice. Now I'm going to attach crinoline to the hem, and I'm just going to place the crinoline because I'm going to fold it because I don't like that rough edge, and then just place it on the right side of my fabric. I'm going to top stitch that. After top stitching, I'm going to bend it over and also top stitch it on the wrong side. So just look closely. After doing all of that, this is what we have. Iron it properly and our dress is ready. I think I did justice to this recreation, or what do you think? If you have any questions, please drop it in the comment box, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment. So till my next video, stay jiggy. Bye.